Imagine Alexei. The office. It's 9 in the morning. His boss has just taken out on him over a failed project, one that wasn't really his. There are 100 emails in his inbox, half marked urgent. There's a heavy, cold lump in his chest, a lump of anger, resentment, and helplessness. But Alexei takes a deep breath. He clenches his fists under the table and whispers to himself a mantra he heard on a trendy podcast. You have to be stoic. I can't control events, only my reactions. He pushes his anger down, ignores his mounting anxiety, and gets to work, feeling a strange guilt about his own fatigue. Do you recognize this? Perhaps it's you. Paradox. Now let's ask ourselves an uncomfortable, even dangerous question. What if this stoicism that Alexei and thousands like him preach isn't fortitude? What if this isn't a path to inner freedom, but rather a thinly disguised, sophisticated form of enslavement? We've taken the ancient, profound philosophy of sages and emperors and turned it into a cudgel. A cudgel used to beat over the head anyone who dares to protest, get tired, or demand justice. With this cudgel, you force yourself to remain silent when you should shout, to endure when it's time to leave, and justify it with lofty words about self-control and acceptance. Today, we'll journey into the very heart of this substitution. We'll expose a global deception that forces you to suffer in silence, blaming everything on fate and self-improvement. We'll explore how the most powerful tool for personal growth, Stoicism, has been stolen, emasculated, and replaced by an ideology of resignation. An ideology that calls on you to accept what is precisely within your power to change. Your boss, your toxic relationships, your overload. The system has convinced you that your legitimate, healthy, human discontent is a weakness, an emotional breakdown that needs to be suppressed, accepted, and let go. And do you know why? Because your quiet suffering is very, very profitable. While you struggle internally with anger, someone else is reaping the fruits of your silent labor. Let's figure out how you're being forced to suffer for someone else's benefit, dressed up in ancient wisdom. This isn't an article about philosophy. It's a guide to disarming a weapon aimed at your soul. Friends, please subscribe, like, and comment. This is very important to us. And we continue. What was stolen from Stoicism? A brief introduction to the true teaching. Before exposing the counterfeit, we need to understand the original. Otherwise, we'll be tilting at windmills, mistaking them for true giants. So let's play detective for a few minutes and reconstruct the true Stoicism, a philosophy that has been cruelly distorted. It all begins with a single, yet fundamental, principle. A principle that is misrepresented in corporate training today. This is the dichotomy of control. Simply put, it's a rigid, uncompromising division of everything in the world into two categories. On the one hand, there's that which is beyond our control. The weather, traffic jams, other people's opinions, random events, economic crises, what the ancients called fate. On the other hand, there's that which depends entirely on us. Our own judgments, our values, our actions and decisions. Our reactions to events. That's all there is to it. All that wisdom. But what's the catch? The catch is that today we're told, just accept everything that's beyond your control and calm down. And they stop there. That's half the truth, taken out of context. The half that's most convenient for the system. Because the second cornerstone of Stoicism is not the suppression, but the transformation of emotions. When Seneca wrote on anger, he didn't urge us to shove it deep down and pretend everything is fine. No, he urged us to understand its cause. Anger is a signal, like pain in the body. It screams, there's a problem. Pay attention. Imagine your emotions as smoke coming from under the hood of a car. False Stoicism suggests taping up all the cracks and driving on, pretending nothing is happening. True Stoicism tells us to stop, open the hood, and find the source of the smoke. Because if we don't find it, the car will explode. Your anger at injustice isn't weakness. It's the smoke from under the hood of your conscience. It shouldn't be suppressed, but used as fuel for right action. And this brings us to the main point, what modern gurus have erased from textbooks. True Stoicism is virtue and action. It's not about passively sitting in the lotus position and meekly accepting every blow of fate. It's about actively, consciously pursuing what you believe is right, in those areas where you can act. Look at Marcus Aurelius. He wasn't a hermit. He was the emperor of Rome, one of the most powerful men of his time. He didn't accept barbarians on the borders of the empire. He led armies against them. He didn't suppress emotions against corrupt officials. He passed laws and governed. His admiration for myths isn't the diary of a passive contemplator, but a guide to action for someone bearing enormous responsibility. His stoicism wasn't about tolerating the crap heaped upon him. It was about maintaining an inner core and clarity of mind and acting in a chaotic and imperfect world, doing what must be done, fixing what can be fixed, and only accepting with grace what can't be fixed. It was precisely this core, active action within the limits of what we can control that was ripped from philosophy. All that was left was a shell, except, and now, when you hear the word Stoic, you picture not a Roman emperor in armor leading his legions, but an exhausted office worker meekly pulling his own cart. But that's not Stoicism. It's a sinister parody of it. And now we'll see how it will be used against you. Substitution of concepts. How Stoicism was turned into a weapon of deception. So, we know what Stoicism was. Strong, active, principled. Now, let's look at what it's become. This isn't an accidental distortion. It's a deliberate substitution of concepts, deployed on three main fronts. Its goal is to force you to accept man-made evil as inevitable and renounce your right to action. The first substitution, from accept fate to tolerate injustice. This is the main, fundamental deception. Stoic philosophy was a tool for dealing with objective, irresistible forces, with the death of a loved one, with illness, with a hurricane that destroyed a house. That's fate. The system, however, has slipped you a substitution. It has replaced fate with man-made problems. Your boss is not a natural disaster. They are a specific person whose behavior can and should be corrected. An exorbitant KPI isn't a bolt from the blue. It's a calculated management decision aimed at squeezing every last drop of juice out of you. Mobbing, salary arrears, a toxic work environment. None of this is the weather. These are things created by people and can be changed by people. But you're told, accept it as a given. You're sold the idea that fighting the system is pointless. And so, remembering the dichotomy of control, you mistakenly list human meanness, greed, and incompetence as unchangeable. You tolerate it. Meanwhile, the system skimps on your working conditions and profits from your silent suffering. The second substitution, from control your reaction to don't have the right to react. This is where the deception becomes truly insidious. You've been led to believe that any negative emotion is a failure, your own personal fault. Are you angry at injustice? You're a poor Stoic. Are you feeling burnout from an overwhelming workload? You're a weakling who can't control your emotions. Your natural, healthy, human reaction to unhealthy conditions has been declared unstoic. You've been made to feel guilty for your psyche's very attempt to signal, hey, something's wrong here. We're being bullied. You've been led to believe that controlling your reaction means feeling nothing at all. But that's a lie. Control means not letting anger take over and throw you off course. But anger itself is a compass. It points to the problem. False Stoicism encourages you to break the compass and continue wandering with a smile on your face. True Stoicism encourages you to learn to use this compass to find a way to improve the situation. The third substitution, the cult of resilience as a tool. This is the modern corporate embodiment of perverted Stoicism. They hire you an expensive coach who talks about resilience. You're sold books on how to become invulnerable. But let's ask a simple question. Invulnerable to what? The answer is obvious. Exploitation. You're not taught how to change the environment that cripples you. You're taught how to survive in it without breaking completely. You're not given the tools to remove the source of stress. You're given a pill to endure it. This isn't resilience. It's anesthesia. It's a spiritual painkiller that allows the system to continue to hurt you while you, drugged, convince yourself of your own strength. You're being crippled while you tick off a box. I'm becoming a more resilient Stoic. The result of this triple substitution is disastrous. All you're left with from a powerful philosophy is slavish submission. Your heart, active action, is ripped out and you're left with an empty shell, passive patience. You're not becoming stronger. You're simply learning to moan more quietly. Why would anyone want that? Let's see what this game of false fortitude leads to. The price turns out to be much higher than you might think. Fact. The price of false stoicism. The price of suppression. This all sounds like an abstract philosophical discussion until we look at the cold, hard data. Until we see what this game of resilience and acceptance means for you personally. The result is not enlightenment, but a diagnosis. And here's what the research says. Fact. Suppression leads to relapse. You can convince yourself all you want that everything is under control, that you're coping, but your psyche is an abstract concept. It's a biological mechanism that follows certain laws. And one of these laws is that energy doesn't disappear without a trace. Research in psychology and neuroscience clearly shows that excessive emotional suppression is a ticking time bomb. Constant, pent-up stress increases cortisol levels, which has a destructive effect on the body. This is a direct path to clinical depression, when the nervous system simply becomes exhausted and turns off the light. Anxiety disorders, when unresolved fear begins to rage within, giving rise to panic attacks and paralyzing insecurity. Psychosomatic illnesses, ulcers, hypertension, migraines, heart problems. Your body begins to scream where your mind has gone silent. Mechanism of harm, the shadow where emotions retreat. Where does your suppressed anger go when you smile in response to an insult? Where does the resentment go when you're forced to do someone else's work and you say, "It's no big deal"? It doesn't dissolve. It retreats into the shadow, as Jung said. And there it transforms into one of two monsters. The first monster is autoaggression. This is when all the anger you haven't directed at the offender turns around and hits you back. You begin to hate yourself for your weakness. You blame yourself for not being able to pull yourself together. You burn out because your mental energy is spent not on action, but on containing an internal explosion. This is self-devouring. The second monster is uncontrollable outbursts. That last straw, when the cup of patience runs over, suppressed emotions burst forth with hurricane force. But in the wrong place. You take out not on your boss, but on a child who simply threw toys around. On a spouse who simply asked a question. On a cat that gets in your way. This is blind, destructive rage that ruins your real, important relationships because you didn't let it find its way to the right place and time. Beneficiary. Who needs your heroism? And here is the most important, the most bitter question. Who benefits from this whole setup? Who benefits from your silent suffering? The answer is obvious. An employer who doesn't spend money on improving working conditions, on psychological support for employees, on adequate workload distribution. He benefits from your patience. Your resilience is money in his pocket. A social system that refuses to change. A system that thrives on people accepting unfair laws, delayed payments, and rudeness in government agencies and on demanding change. While you wage a titanic battle within yourself with your own emotions, someone else reaps the fruits of your stoicism. You deplete your mental resources by suppressing anger, and the system that generated that anger thrives. Your silence is its greatest asset. Your patience is its fuel. You pay for the substitution with your health, your relationships, your inner world, and all for someone else's benefit. This realization is painful, but it is precisely this realization that gives you the strength for the final, most important step. Learning to distinguish the philosophy of freedom from the ideology of slavery. How can we distinguish the philosophy of freedom from the ideology of slavery? All this brings us to the main practical question. How can we avoid being deceived? How can we, when called upon to be stoic, understand whether the tool for our growth or trap for our will? You don't need a philosophy degree. You need a simple checklist. Direct questions to ask yourself when you're called upon to stand firm. Question 1. Are you being told to accept what can and should be changed? This is the litmus test. Ask yourself the hard question. Is the situation I accept fate or someone else's decision? Fate. True Stoicism. The flight was canceled due to a hurricane. You were diagnosed with a serious illness. An economic crisis began. Someone else's decision. False Stoicism, your boss constantly takes out his anger on you. Your salary is systematically delayed. Your partner humiliates you. If a situation is a result of human actions, it can and should be corrected. You might be told, get over it. Everyone goes through this. This is a lie. True Stoicism gives you the strength to accept the inevitable, preserving your energy for fighting what can be changed. False Stoicism encourages you to accept everything. Question 2. Are you being called to passivity or virtuous action? Remember Marcus Aurelius. He wasn't passive. He acted. So ask yourself, what exactly should I do after this acceptance? Virtuous action. True Stoicism. The situation is terrible, but I am in control of my actions. I will make a plan to find a new job. I will calmly and firmly talk to my boss about the unacceptability of his behavior. I will learn my rights and prepare a formal complaint. Passivity. False Stoicism. The situation is terrible. You just need to endure, keep working, not rock the boat, and wait for it to get better. The main thing is not to show emotion. If all they ask of you is silent patience, that's not Stoicism. That's training. The philosophy of freedom always supports the right cause and acting in accordance with one's conscience, even if it's difficult. Question 3. Are your emotions being declared a problem or signal? This is the key to manipulation. They tell you, you're overreacting. Turn that statement on its head and ask, what exactly am I overreacting to? Emotion as a signal. True Stoicism. I feel anger. Why? Because my boundaries have been violated. My dignity has been trampled. This is a signal that it's time to defend myself. Let's figure out the cause of the anger. Emotion as a problem. False Stoicism. I feel anger. This is terrible. I'm a bad Stoic. I need to quickly bury this anger deep down, pretend everything is fine and feign calm. Your emotions are not the enemy. They are your built-in navigation system. False Stoicism encourages you to turn it off, so you'll take the wrong turn and crash. The bottom line, what does a true Stoic ask, and what does a false Stoic command? Just remember this formula. In any difficult situation, true Stoicism asks itself, what can and should I do, following goodness and justice within the limits of what I control? It explores the boundaries of its influence and acts within them, proactively, boldly, responsibly. False Stoicism doesn't ask questions. It commands. Shut up and endure. This difference is the essence. One path leads to your personal sovereignty, to dignity and true inner strength. The other leads to resignation, burnout, and illness. The choice is always yours. But to make it, you must first recognize the deception. Conclusion, a call to revolt in conscious Stoicism. So, we've come full circle. We've exposed the deception, dissected it, and seen how it works. Now we can sum it up and decide what to do with this knowledge. Let's get this straight. True Stoicism isn't about patience. It's about dignity. It's a philosophy of a warrior who looks at the world soberly, accepts the inevitable, but that's inevitable, and fights for justice where his hands are not tied. It's a weapon of personal sovereignty that makes you master your life, even in the most difficult circumstances. What they sell us under the same name is an ideology of slavery. It's a caricature created to subdue you. Its goal is to make you accept man-made evil as fate, suppress your voice of protest, and settle comfortably in your cage, convincing yourself that you're free. It's a weapon of mass deception, and it's aimed straight at your heart. Remember this image. A true Stoic is not a hunched slave silently bearing his cross. He is a Roman legionary who, knowing he could die in any battle, he accepts this, still sharpens a sword and goes to defend what is dear to him. This is a person who uses his mind not for self-deception and justification of suffering, but like a scalpel, to separate what can be changed from what cannot, and to direct all his will into action. His strength lies not in the absence of feelings, but in the ability to channel them correctly. His anger becomes fuel for the fight against injustice. His fear is transformed into vigilance, his pain into compassion for others. And now the final, most important question is addressed to you personally. So, who are you? A Stoic who is forced to suffer for someone else's benefit? A person who suppresses themselves, silently swallowing grievances, paying for it with their mental and physical health so that someone else can become richer and more peaceful? Or are you a Stoic who, by finding inner freedom, gains the power to change the world around you for the better? The choice seems obvious, but it requires courage. It requires stopping being convenient. Stop fearing your own anger. Learn to hear the signals of your soul and trust them. Your mind is your most important and most formidable weapon. It is precisely this that they are trying to disarm, slipping you surrogates and substitutes. Don't let them do this. The time for mindless tolerance and acceptance is over. The time for conscious rebellion has arrived. A rebellion that begins not with shouting in the street, but with a quiet, firm question within. Is this really beyond my control? Or was I just told that? Ask this question every time you're called to steadfastness. Ask yourself where virtue lies in this situation, where justice lies, and where the limits of your control lie. And then, whatever path you choose, patience or struggle, it will be your conscious, mature, and truly Stoic choice. The choice of a free person.